2, 1.
Hi, everybody. This is CJ Rosenbaum from Amazon Sellers Lawyer. The law firm is called Rosenbaum and Familauer, but most of you know us from our website. And I'm really, really pleased to have Bernie Thompson from Efficient Era online with us today for this webinar. And we're going to be talking about what private label sellers should be doing right now to prepare for the Christmas season. I think most importantly and vital for sellers is how to avoid listing suspensions, how to avoid suspensions, what you can do now to avoid your products being suspended. And if you do get suspended, we'll touch on it, but we're really, really going to focus today on avoiding that dreaded email that hopefully very few of you are going to see this Christmas season.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'm glad to be here. So I'm the founder of Efficient Era, which is a tools company, but probably more importantly, I've been selling on Amazon since 2009. So I've gotten to see over the last few years a lot of different things. Never had an account suspension, but have had many product suspensions, unfortunately. So have a little bit of background to talk about this.
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, we see a lot of it. The product suspensions are growing. It's great that you've never had it. I'd like to start, if you don't mind, why don't we start by talking about the types of product suspensions or the type of listing suspensions that's very, very common for sellers to suffer. And then we'll get into sort of what causes them and, more importantly, how to avoid suspensions. That's the goal, avoiding suspensions.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. You know, it's interesting because you know, we do focus on account suspensions generally when we talk about things because they're so impactful. But product suspensions are, you know, in my experience in talking with a lot of sellers, at least you know, 10 or 50 times more common than account suspensions. Of course, you know, they're only affecting one product. Interestingly, they come in a lot of different types. You know, Amazon may turn off an ASIN entirely. Where you try to go to that ASIN, that product page, and it just comes up with one of those Amazon dogs. Have you ever seen an Amazon dog, CJ?
You know, unfortunately, we see a lot of them every day. You know, I'm really glad we're talking about how to avoid suspensions because we usually only get the call, the email when there's a problem. And yeah. I think when sellers, if they can avoid it and they stay in business, it's just much, much better.
Yeah, yeah. So just kind of quickly going through the different types, you know, you do have those kind of full ASIN suspensions where Amazon pulls the whole product down off the site. But actually the more common ones are ones where they are just suspending one seller's ability to have an offer against an ASIN, or a lot of times, and again, I think we're getting more common here, is they suspend a product for a seller from FBA for that seller. So basically that seller's FBA inventory is no longer fulfillable. And there's some great kind of workarounds potentially with some of these types of suspensions, like that one, for example. You can just, Amazon won't stop you from doing it merchant fulfilled if that's the kind of product suspension you're dealing with. And then there's kind of another interesting special case, which is buy box suppression. They haven't actually fully suspended the product. However, they are not allowing anyone to win the buy box. And typically the trigger for that is pricing reasons. So each of these different types of suspensions has a different kind of trigger, and we'll kind of talk through those. Do you think about the types of suspensions the same way, CJ? You know, where there's kind of these different levels and completeness of suspension of the product?
You know, we do, and we see them coming down in streaks, where for a month or a month and a half, we'll see like a ton of safety suspensions, and people are going to lose their products for safety suspension that could range from the UL certificate not having been provided or there being some defects in it. Or there'll be a series of complaints by consumers who claim that a battery was getting hot or electronic device it felt like it was overheating, and those listings will go down. The way I think you can avoid these problems is to be really careful and really test your products and really keep a great eye out on what the consumer is going to experience. I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but if you're on top of it, you really can avoid these things, and you're doing tests of your own products in advance. You can avoid a lot of the safety issues. For example, if it's a battery or electronic device like you sell, you may want to see how does it get warm to the touch, and then possibly put that in and let the consumers know that that's sort of a normal byproduct of the battery, for example. It is going to get warm when you use it, and that's a way I think that you can avoid suspensions. I'm assuming you've seen similar things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely. It's interesting. Amazon's philosophy. So we talk about the types of suspensions, and then there's kind of the causes. And in this product safety area, it's really interesting because, like a lot of things, Amazon actually for years when they were growing as a platform, really did not police their catalog very much. I mean, Amazon's got millions of products. We know how Amazon works, right? All of us who are sellers, they don't spend a lot of time on any one individual ASIN or issue. So their solution for years was really to not police these issues much. Well, the big shift, and the reason really why we're having this webinar is Amazon has kind of flipped that focus from not policing to saying, well, we're just going to kind of have an assumption of guilt and take action quickly. And so when it comes to these, and then appeals are not easy. So once you're into that phase, especially for product safety type things, our experiences are it's a challenge for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think in our experience, a lot of times the product safety complaints are a single incident that happens with a customer. Kind of from the perspective of a manufacturer, there are often things that are going to happen. You're not going to avoid every single type of incident. And they're often triggered by automatic processes. We had a suspension of a USB microscope, and the suspension was triggered because a person wrote a negative review about the microscope. So, and Amazon is actually having bots looking for certain keywords in negative reviews, and they used the microscope to look at their daughter's cut. And they were commenting on that, and that was in a sense kind of I think it was a 3-star review. So there was kind of a positive aspect of the review, which was, boy, this was interesting. I was looking at my daughter's cut, but then they had something negative to say about the product, like I forgot what it was, but it was something cosmetic about the product. Well, Amazon saw that word "cut," probably got triggered by a bot. And typically the way an Amazon process might work is something will get flagged. A human being may or may not look at it very quickly to make a decision on what to do. And in that case, they made the decision to suspend. It took a while and a few appeals. That was an example of one where we were actually able to get that product unsuspended once we kind of untangled and somebody really, a human being, looked at the words and realized what the customer was saying.
Did you see an increase in the safety issues after the Eclipse? And a question just came up from Kimberly. If you can repost that, I'd appreciate it. Put that back on. I seem to have clicked the wrong thing and it disappeared. So Kimberly, please post that back up. But right after the Eclipse, we saw an uptick in safety issues on the ASIN level. One, on that particular product, but just also across the board. It seemed like consumers were sort of jumping on the safety bandwagon after the Eclipse and all the Eclipse glasses. Did you see something like that?
Well, I think actually that we saw a lot happening this summer. I think it happened to be that Amazon is just increasing the number of product suspensions. They seem to be independent initiatives of the Eclipse, although I think sometimes you get these triggering things where something like the Eclipse glass safety issue will cause all of Amazon to get calibrated more in a protective direction. For example, I'm actually going to show Kimberly's question here. I don't know whether everybody can see this on the screen, but a suspension, and there was a customer stated that that Kimberly's product was a knockoff, but the suspension was BS. So I don't know.
Maybe I'll comment on the BS, and thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, a lot of the product suspensions, and again, we're going to teach you how to avoid it today. A lot of the product suspensions based upon IP issues are entirely based upon BS, which of course stands for baseless. But the complaints, but a way I think if you're selling products and you're concerned, maybe before you list a product, you want to check the blogs, you want to check the forums to see whether other sellers are having problems with that particular brand or that particular product. I'm not sure. What do you do? What do you recommend people do in terms of avoiding IP issues, for example?
Well, it's a really tough issue. It's interesting. Prior to the Amazon era, really IP issues have been something that for small companies has been a challenge. In the big boys world of the Microsofts and IBMs, which are companies I used to work at, when somebody makes an intellectual property threat against you, you typically take a gigantic patent portfolio and threaten the other company back. That works as long as the other company sells products. There's been this phenomena the last 10 or 20 years where you have these patent trolls that are companies that don't sell anything, and so you can't threaten them back. And the patent trolls have extracted very large settlements out of the big companies in the patent space. So then as I shift to Amazon and much smaller companies, it's been interesting how it's played out. Again, in the early years of Amazon Marketplace, Amazon really did not provide a means for legitimate right holders to really stop people from selling products that violated those rights. I mean, pretty much Amazon just didn't have processes for it, and so the rights holders. Well, they had recourse. They could go outside of Amazon to the legal system, but sometimes it's hard to track down Amazon sellers. So again, this is a really huge flip Amazon's done in the last year or two. In the last year or two, Amazon has created processes, but they are extremely simple. The processes are, if somebody reports anything, we suspend immediately and we let the two of them work it out. So they're still not spending time on understanding or policing these issues, really. They've just flipped the burden of proof from the accuser to the accused. At least that's the way I look at it. I don't know, did you look at it differently, CJ?
No, I got to tell you, that's exactly how we see it, where it seems like there's absolutely no gatekeeper at all, or at least there hasn't been any gatekeeper for any IP complaint. The form is very simplistic, and there's no one there to look at it to see whether it is entirely and utterly baseless, or it might have some merit. But I say what we've seen just this week for the first time in a while, we saw it sporadically before that, is that Amazon is actually changing some of the listings based upon the IP complaint. Like if a seller is using certain words like that belong to somebody else, or descriptions, or cutting and pasting, we've seen Amazon now change the listing and really take out the offending language, which I think is really great in some aspects, because they're letting people sell. If you're a brand, you're also accomplishing that goal as well, where they're taking out the offending language to sort of stop the infringement without cutting sellers' legs off. And I think that's a really great thing. I want to shift gears a little bit, Bernie, and see what you're seeing when it comes to like sort of the more common issues. We talked about safety, but like not as described as the grounds for having an ASIN that you just lose the ability to sell, either permanently or temporarily. What have you been seeing when it comes to the not as described?
Yeah, so we've been seeing the number of these increase. So basically, this is something where Amazon is concerned that what is in the product listing that customers are seeing is not matching what's actually an FBA. And basically, the usual trigger for this is a customer has some issue with the product, and they're talking with Amazon's customer support, the customer support that helps Amazon buyers. And that Amazon customer support agent, as far as I can tell and understand, has the ability to trigger what internally at Amazon is called a bin check. From a seller's perspective, it looks like an FBA suspension. They pull down your FBA fulfilled offer. Typically, within a day or so, you'll get an email that usually has a title like "Important Your FBA Inventory." And like a lot of Amazon suspensions, there'll be a lot of words there, but pretty much they'll just tell you what ASIN has an action taken against it and very little else. I mean, they'll basically just say something's wrong with this ASIN. Interestingly, those sorts of suspensions, they're not usually asking you for anything in that case. I mean, their mode of operation is that they're having somebody at the FBA warehouse validate that, okay, the customer said this one thing, the product should be something else. go physically look at the product and see if it's true. And what's interesting is rarely can they actually learn anything like that. Like in our world, it's usually a compatibility issue or something like that. And the customer is, just having a bad experience. And if you go look at the outside of a box, you're not going to be able to determine anything. As one really important tip, if you have this ability as a seller, is Amazon won't tell you it's an FBA suspension, but if you can recognize this type of suspension and you have the ability to do merchant fulfilled, just immediately flip that ASIN over to merchant fulfilled so that you don't start losing sales and losing search position while Amazon is doing this bin check of the FBA inventory, which, by the way, can take a long time. Sometimes it's fast, like a day, but sometimes it can be a week, 2 weeks, or more.
We're getting some questions in. Julie has asked that she's seen a listing shut down because the customer returned, saying these are the quotes from the customer, upon receipt of a product, it appears to be opened and repackaged. We see that all the time. One of the things that we highly recommend is you opt out of returns going back into inventory, because the people that staff Amazon's warehouses, I don't think they're really focused on doing any product evaluations as to what a customer might not be happy to receive the second time around. What have you seen on that in terms of packages being opened, shipped, and the customers having the perception that it was opened and repackaged?
Yeah, this is actually a huge issue. There's an enormous amount of discussion of this among the selling community, especially the large sellers. CJ, go put out that fire.
Yeah. There are some really great things about being in New York. That's not one of them.
So this is a huge issue, and so it turns out there is an FBA setting, as CJ was mentioning, where Amazon is less aggressive about putting items back into inventory. But the really bizarre thing that not even people inside Amazon realize all the time is there's still a lot of scenarios where the warehouse workers will take a returned item and put it right back into inventory. Basically, my understanding is if the customer says they never opened the product and they're just returning it, unless the warehouse employee sees something wrong and they're just doing the most cursory check possible of the outside, they're going to stick that back into inventory as new based on the customer saying they hadn't opened the product. Well, guess what? Customers want to be able to return products and not pay for return shipping. So customers are really motivated to answer that question incorrectly, to lie about whether they opened the product or not. So there's this whole process that sellers cannot turn off that results in open products ending up in FBA inventory. And then the crazy thing is Amazon will suspend you for it if a customer reports it or suspend the product. So I don't, my recommendation at this point, there's beginning to be an awareness inside Amazon that this has been happening. It's been happening for a while. If you get a suspension like this, I'd actually recommend explaining this issue, that FBA, that you only ship new goods to Amazon, but FBA themselves, if the customer reports the item as unopened, checks the item back into inventory, and some percent of the time the customer didn't report that correctly, and that's why there was a used sold as new here. It was actually part of the FBA process does not prevent used sold as new. Now, you may not get them to accept that answer initially, but that actually is what's happening, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to kind of get Amazon to understand this, and that these used sold as new suspensions are going to stop, because there's been a lot of them of products, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing, I know a lot of sellers may not like this, I wouldn't mind seeing Amazon go to a process where returns do not or never go back into inventory, since it seems like an impossible thing to have warehouse people all over the country and all over the world having to do a check. We know it's not going on now. Julie also asked about any recourse here. Bernie and I have talked many times, and we often agree, and sometimes we disagree. I don't agree that you really should ever point the finger at Amazon unless you really can show is there a mistake. If you really do the research and show that a particular product wasn't yours, it was part of commingled inventory, and you can show the tracing. I would recommend that the recourse be a bit different and take more responsibility for making sure packaging is better, opting out of returns if you can. But reality is, whatever you're trying to do to get your listing back, it's persuasive writing, and you really have to do a self-analysis. We have a couple other questions. We have, read this here. Oh, this is great. This is great. This is from Kimberly S., where she's received a request for refunds on grocery items. Okay, so we haven't dealt with grocery items yet. Bernie, have you seen this request for refunds on food and other Oreo cookies, for example?
I'm only an expert in Oreo cookies as a voracious consumer.
Same here. Same here. Okay, now here's a question. Can individual product suspensions lead to seller suspensions where the whole account goes down?
Yeah, and of course the short answer is yes. Amazon, you can go to the in Seller Central to the account health section, and for both intellectual property and product safety, I believe it's a 6-month period where it sits there on the account. Do you know that, CJ? I think for product quality it is 6 months. Is it the same for intellectual property?
The intellectual property is very erratic, where I haven't seen actually any set time limit at all. Where when we have larger sellers who have withstood, dozens of IP issues, and all of a sudden they get the straw that breaks the camel's back, we work on the most recent ones first. And as soon as we have a bunch of retractions, then we submit, a plan of action to get the seller back on while we continue to work on getting the retractions. But we haven't seen any rhyme or reason to either the number of complaints or how long they can go back in terms of being effective. We tend to work on the most recent ones first.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes. I would say the same thing. Really, actually, I don't have enough experience to know where the threshold is. I have the feeling, as with a lot of Amazon things, there's some event that is often, kind of automatically detected that lands something in a queue, like it lands your account in a queue to be reviewed. And generally in that sort of scenario, the Amazon employee reviewing that queue that's going to make that decision about suspension has a lot of information available to them, your account history, individual ASIN histories, but they are required kind of by Amazon's processes to make that decision very quickly. Somebody sitting on one of those queues might have to look at 20, 30, 40 things in an hour. They're only going to spend a minute or two on you. So it does mean that they're definitely going to notice that there's some prior product suspensions when your account comes up for review for an account suspension, and it's going to weigh against you. But it's very difficult to tell how much. A lot of it's down to that individual, unfortunately.
We interview people who worked in their offices in India, mostly Hyderabad and Bangalore. The people that we knew were in the Hyderabad office, about how are they trained and what are they looking for. One, they're trained on all videos. There's very little personal interaction in their training, and what they're looking for is to really make a good decision. Also, many people may not know this, but the people who are reading these things in India, they love their job. Amazon's like one of the best, if not the best, employer to have. So the people that work there are really trying to make good decisions, both for the company and for the seller. And they get a lot of bad press. A lot of people think and say a lot of bad things about the people who they're dealing with in India. We find success working with them and trying to give them what they need to reinstate listings. All right, we have another issue. I know how I would answer this question. Bernie, I want to see what your thoughts are. Here's the question. What should I do if I receive a warning and I am not at fault?
Right. Yeah. No, it's extremely challenging. I think, based on, lots of experience, I think if you talk to CJ or any of the other great consultants out there, they will tell you, you have to take blame even if you don't believe you're at fault. And I, as a seller, and I think every seller I've ever talked to struggles with that mightily when we are, in fact, pretty confident that that it was a user error or it was Amazon, it was Amazon process problem or something. So, and I've, just from a practical point of view, I have done both strategies, with appeals where we've fallen on our sword when we weren't at fault, and where we And then alternatively, where we've explained, why we think we're not at fault. And actually, frankly, the results have been mixed. We've had successes and failures with both strategies. So the general industry advice is always fall on your sword. My response to that is, I don't know. I don't know if that's actually the right thing to do. It may be, maybe do both. Follow. Actually, at some point when CJ asked me, I'll give a different reply on what I think you should do. In a reply, which actually goes to what CJ was just saying, which is, give that person who's going to quickly review your appeal every confidence that it's not going to come back to haunt them if they reinstate you. That's actually, and whatever it takes to achieve that end goal is actually what I would advise.
Well, I can tell you, I think taking responsibility is vital. It's in their 14 leadership principles, and that's what they're trained to follow. But the days of admitting to doing something wrong, those days are long gone. So you can accept responsibility, but you can phrase it in a way that you're just going to make your business better. And it's not necessarily that you did anything wrong, but every single business, every one of us can do something better. So that's the way I think you take responsibility. I also think that, and a lot of the consultants out there don't realize this, at the very end of the game, if Amazon refuses to reinstate you, you have the right, or refuse to reinstate your top selling listing, to take them to arbitration. So if you write something in your initial plan of action where you admit to doing something wrong, where you didn't do anything wrong, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. And I think that the more advanced people in Hyderabad realize that. So you can fall on the sword and phrase it in a way that says, this is what we can do better, rather than saying we did something wrong. But I just think that's the way to go, that you preserve all your avenues and all your bites at the apple to get reinstated. Okay, so yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brendan.
Yeah, I'd agree, and one of the frustrating things about a suspension is Amazon's typically going to tell you something's wrong with this ASIN or your account. Tell us what's wrong and tell us what you're going to do about it, and that's basically it. So they're kind of their wording is written in such a way that you've done something wrong, you're guilty. Just tell us what you're guilty of. And I think that's really poorly worded. I think Amazon could do way better on that wording. The way I actually interpret that statement, so let me reword that for Amazon. Something has gone wrong. Please tell me, what your processes are and how you're going to improve your processes so this specific thing and anything like it won't happen again. It's a bit of a lot of Amazon's influenced by a lot of lean manufacturing and product quality concepts. You'll hear and you'll see sometimes things like Annan cords being talked about and such. They are concerned about the particular event, but what's often effective in kind of responding to that particular event is just to accept that is a trigger to look at your overall quality, safety, or intellectual property processes and reassure Amazon that you're a good guy trying to do the right thing and that you're diligent and complete in your work that way. So, yeah.
All right, we got a question from Mark. Amazon claims in their terms of service that they do not allow intellectual property to be copied. Yet, when push comes to shove, they will not take a position. They leave it up to the two sellers to work out their problem. If the seller violating the intellectual property rights does not want to work it out, what is the recourse for the seller whose IP is being stolen? Will Amazon provide all contact information of the seller violating the IP?
Yeah, good.
Well, I can answer that. We do a ton of intellectual property issues. Generally, Amazon knocks the accused violator out from selling that listing, at least. A lot of times they'll suspend the whole account. So Amazon generally is overly broad as to who they knock out, which is why it's so easy to get listings back on when there's IP complaints. But there are other steps you can take. You can contact who's violating, let them know what their ramifications are. You can threaten litigation. You can file litigation. You can CC Amazon's legal department. There are a lot of steps. If you find that the same seller is staying on, there are a lot of things you can do. And if you go to Amazon's legal, they're very responsive if you have to get that far. But usually they're overly inclusive in who they knock off a listing. Okay, here we go. Ready, Bernie? From Julia B. Can I access my seller account from the same IP address and be an authorized user for another account and log on simultaneously? What do you think about a seller logging on to multiple accounts from the same computer?
Yeah, I mean, this is getting outside the scope of this webinar, so I don't want to talk about this too long. But this has been Amazon does track IP addresses, and if they get to the point where something else triggers them to investigate an issue, they will have it in their data that this account and that account were accessed from the same IP address and may be related. So just know that if you can do it all day long until there's a triggering event that causes them to go look at that data. As far as I can tell, they don't do anything kind of proactively just on that basis. That act in and of itself will not cause any problem, but that data is sitting there, and Amazon will consider that data if something that they view as negative happens.
I got to tell you, to avoid the suspension, Julia, stop doing it. Stop accessing more than one account from that same computer. If you want to avoid losing your listings, you want to avoid getting suspended, just stop. We know there are plenty of sellers that do have access to or maintain multiple accounts. They use different computers and different IP addresses. And we've seen several clients who walk in with 6 laptops with 6 different Verizon hotspots just to make sure when they log on it's entirely different. So to get back sort of the focus, stop and make sure if you're logging on to multiple accounts, you're using different devices that can't be traced. But yeah, let's take a shift.
Well, and then just to say the Amazon process for that. So we actually have multiple selling accounts that are 2 of them that are approved with Amazon. They're in different business areas. There's certain requirements. You actually have to have different entities, different bank accounts. Amazon basically wants to know that you're never going to sell the same product across the 2 different selling accounts. But there is a process that you can apply to be approved to have multiple selling accounts, and they will approve things through that process. We've had that done. So that is the right way to handle that under the Amazon processes.
Did you also find that they wanted to see different companies or different entities, and not just different products but different lines of products?
Yeah, it was easier if the products were completely unrelated. And in I only know the example of where they really are completely unrelated. But yeah, I don't understand all their concerns, but I think one of the things comes down to they don't want, frankly, under suspensions, to suspend one account and then just have the seller shift the inventory to another account and start selling it there. I don't know if they're worried about other things, but that seems to be a primary worry.
Yeah, and I definitely seem to feel that the Amazon, which is probably one of the most diversified companies, in the history of commerce, for some reason wants us and wants sellers to be not diversified at all, have all their eggs in one basket. But yeah. Let me ask you to get sort of back on point. What do you think the top thing is that a seller can do to avoid losing a listing?
Well, in terms of frequency, the top thing actually you can do is a mitigation, which is even though you might rely on FBA, have the ability to do merchant fulfilled. Because in terms of pure quantity of suspensions, FBA suspensions are the most common. And if you can just flip that listing to merchant fulfilled while that FBA suspension is getting worked out, it protects your business significantly, because the big danger is just being out of stock for a long time and having all that effort, all that investment in marketing that you put into that product disappear as that product drops in search position, because the number one input into search position is the historical sales. So if you can keep selling while you work out the FBA suspension, that would actually be kind of the top tip in terms of practical. In the most of the other areas like intellectual property and product safety, those are tough ones, and you're going to get surprised if you're a seller with a lot of products and a lot of sales. You're going to get product suspensions under the current system. It's mostly just in terms of be vigilant. A good example of vigilance is really be looking at negative product reviews, and if anything even hints of something that could fall under a product safety issue, work proactively with those customers to understand the issue, to fix the issue, whatever you can do, before somebody on the Amazon side ends up flagging one of those, which to you will appear kind of at random. You'll have 10 products, you'll have 20 negative complaints that could arguably be something product safety related, and someday just one, apparently at random, will trigger a product suspension. But if you're on top of all of them, doing your best, you will decrease the chance of that negative event happening.
I guess a great way of doing that also, when you're being vigilant, I'd recommend sellers set time aside every single day, monitor the blogs, monitor the forums, and see if you're seeing any trends on products that you might be selling. And if you're seeing blog posts or things in the forums that a particular product or a listing that you're on or a brand that you're on is sort of have problems, you may want to start shying away from that one. And you want to sell things that will keep you in business, and you want to keep your listings. But you really, I believe, should be vigilant and watch what other sellers are experiencing. What's on the forums, what's on the blogs.
Yeah, and in the product reviews, so that's one of the things our efficient data tools do is we send you an email when you get a review, and then we index all the reviews. So like when I get a suspension that, let's say, mentions damage or something, I can go look, do a free text search through all the reviews to find any other reviews that might mention that same word, and that helps a lot in tracking down. Another thing that will tend to happen with suspensions is at first Amazon will tell you nothing about what the suspension's about, just the product. Often after a first appeal, they'll give you some hint at what it was that triggered it, and it may be just a few sentences from a review somewhere. So we can just plug those sentences into our tool, and it'll pull up then the review, and we'll be able to track down kind of everything, including even who purchased that product. And then we have the full context now. Potentially even going back to, because for private label, we're a manufacturer, we may have a customer support thread with this person. If we can see all of that, that gives us a much better chance of both helping the customer and accurately kind of appealing and giving Amazon the information as it relates to the product suspension.
When it comes to avoiding losing listings for IP complaints, do you have any suggestions?
No, God, it's terrible. I'm going to do the obvious things. Don't ever be very careful about trademarks. I mean, trademarks are easy to avoid stomping on somebody else's trademarks. Just don't do it. If you're thinking, I'll ride somebody's coattails by mentioning their name, the days of doing that are gone. Don't do that. Patents are much tougher, as you know, CJ. So CJ, if I'm aware of a patent before I'm accused of infringing on it, what happens to the damages in court if that eventually goes to court?
Patent violation, and it really goes to, it's very, very rare that these things go the distance. But you can be compelled to disgorge, or if you're the other side of the patent, you own the patent, to obtain 100% of the profits, 100%. That was the big fight over Apple versus Samsung, where Samsung was found to be violating, and that's it. The courts don't get involved in why consumers purchased it. If you were violating it, you could be held to refund 100% of the profits. And really, it's draconian. And even Apple and Samsung were worked out resolutions. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on dealing with customer complaints? If you want to avoid your listings going down, and you receive a customer complaint, or even feedback that's not great, what are your thoughts on what our listeners should do to avoid that listing going down?
Yeah, in our experience, when we've gotten a product suspension, it's usually been triggered by a negative product review is the most common one. I mean, some of them are triggered by private customer support interactions between the customer and Amazon, but in the majority of cases, it's been a product review. And there's usually a 3 or 4 day delay between when our tools have told us there's a new product review and there's, talking about something that could fall into, a not as described or product safety issue. We have a window of time to try to help that customer. that may avoid the suspension. I mean, so there's a couple different parts to that. One is you need to know what customer the review came from, and our tools help with that. Then you need to probably convince or help the customer enough that they're willing to update the review before whatever, the Amazon process goes and looks at that review and then potentially triggers the product suspension. Frankly, that's hard to do. I mean, in most cases where we're positively helping a customer and kind of resolving the issue that caused the negative review in the first place, sometimes that's something that happens within a day or two. Most of the time, that's something that happens more like a week. But if we're on it, and we're aware that this is the customer said that I plugged this into that and my other thing was damaged. We know we've got to really be on top of that one and be fast about it. Because it could turn into a suspension, and maybe we could head off that suspension by helping that customer. We're going to help every customer. Our focus for my private label business really is on customer service, but we'll know that that's a high criticality, interaction right there.
Yeah, I mean, we see, Amazon is still, even though they've taken sort of a brand-centric model about 18 months ago, and they've been kind of on that route, they're still customers right, customers right, customers right. So, there's a saying, I think there's an old Cajun saying, that it's easy to ride the horse in the direction that it's going. So if the customer is complaining, you don't have to believe it. You just have to deal with it. And sometimes business isn't fun. So if they're complaining, offer them a refund. If they're complaining, let them keep the product for free. Send them another one. Send them 2 more. But they are still number one. And while you have the customers here, then you have the brand a little bit lower. The sellers, are much, much lower. So the goal is to keep your listings. The goal is to continue to make money. The goal is to continue to make your payroll and pay your bills. So customer complains, you don't have to agree with it, but you certainly need to take steps to show, to make that customer happy. So let's see if we got any more questions here. Let me see here. A lot of the questions have to do with plans of action. We're trying to stay focused on maintaining it. So you never get to that plan of action.
Can I talk about one that was interesting? It tends to only affect bigger sellers who sell multi-channel, but and we've kind of thrown it on our list for product suspension, and that is buy box suppression. I don't know if anybody listening to the webinar has ever had this happen where you, by all signs from your Seller Central, from the Amazon APIs, you've won the buy box, but actually if you go look at the product detail page, nobody has the buy box, and it's pointing to product available from other sellers. And anybody wanting to buy the product would have to go through a few clicks to get there. That's called buy box suppression. Amazon actually takes away the buy box. So the number one trigger for that is pricing that's lower on any other platform. Believe it or not, Amazon is scraping a bunch of other e-commerce sites like Walmart, and Walmart is scraping a bunch of other e-commerce sites like Amazon, and I'm sure other guys are doing it too. And to some degree in both directions, although Amazon is particularly fast and strict about it, if Amazon finds a lower price on another platform, they would rather, they want to stop that.
Bring it on. Bring it on. This is vital. This is a way of protecting your listings. And we've certainly seen the same thing, and sellers around the world have seen the same thing, that Amazon wants to have the lowest price. And you certainly run into problems where, Walmart, for example, is selling it for a bit less. So what are your suggestions?
Well, and it's happened to us, and what could have been a really good circumstance, Walmart wanted to do loss leader pricing on our product. Walmart wanted to lose money and move more of our units. It's the kind of thing people dream about, right? Well, when Amazon is as dominant as they are, and Amazon takes away the buy box, now that's turned a winning situation into something that we need to find a way to fix. And the solution that we've had to come to is basically we need to go direct on every channel. When that was happening to us with Walmart, it was because we were actually wholesaling Walmart, and Walmart was determining pricing, and so they could do loss leader pricing on it. We actually had to shut down our direct relationship with Walmart, or wholesale relationship, and move to the Walmart marketplace so that we could control our pricing and try to take a philosophy of equal pricing on all platforms, so that we could avoid this issue.
Then you have to also ride it out a bit. Because if you did sell direct and now they're controlling the pricing and making it as a loss leader or packaging of other items, you're going to have to ride that out a bit, because you have to wait till the product then sells out at their price.
Yeah, or drop the Amazon price to match, which I guess would be the, you're eating into your profits now for probably your major channel, Amazon. Yeah, so a difficult issue. I think it's something that all the big e-commerce marketplaces don't want to talk about it. You'll get no emails from anybody when this happens. You won't get an email from Amazon. But if you discover that one of your ASINs, the buy box, has disappeared, this is at least as far as we've been able to tell, the number one cause of it. So go search your other e-commerce platforms and try to find a lower price, and that could be the cause.
What are your thoughts, and this is another question, what are your thoughts on sellers who have the lowest price but are not getting the buy box?
Yeah, that's something different. And in private label, that doesn't happen too much, because generally there's not a lot of offers on a private label product. You may control that channel. A lot of factors go into ownership of the buy box, and I'm not an expert on it. Absolutely, price is the number one factor. Number two is the fulfillment method and fulfillment time frame. But as you go down from that, there's a lot of factors, including account rating and other things. So and Amazon has a rotation algorithm where when offers are close, they'll rotate between the offers. So yeah, there is a whole science and black magic to winning the buy box in the kind of arbitrage scenario where you might have dozens or hundreds of sellers that are very close in price, and I don't know that world.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it also seems to be ever changing. That what seems to be really great advice, on 1 week or 1 month, also a little bit later you realize it's not working. You got to really take a 10,000-foot view to see how to address a lot of issues with Amazon, because it's ever changing. One of the great things about the company is that they allow their staff to work independently and make their own decisions. And one of the really awful things is that they allow their staff to work independently and make their own decisions, which means you get a lot of erratic responses. How about this? What types of products are you seeing that are having particular listings that are going down?
Yeah, the used sold as new is really impacting products all over the place. I mean, the more your product is into the food or health and beauty, where it's something that you're putting on your body or in your body, product safety and used sold as new are huge issues. And this FBA issue we talked about earlier is really impacting those types of products for the used sold as new. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all products. Any product that has a trigger for returns, like in my world, it's compatibility. You buy something, that plugs into a USB port. Well, does that work on the USB port of my TV? Well, what could be, a customer support issue or customer confusion issue can quickly become a suspension issue. One of the other types of suspension that we actually haven't talked about yet is a new Amazon process this year where if your return rate stays high for even a short period of time, you will get a kind of an automatic FBA listing closure and a link to a form to go say why that return rate's high, what you could update about the listing to reduce the incidence of that, or if it's a product issue, and then kind of automatically reinstate your listing. So the good thing about this type of suspension is there's kind of this well-automated process for restoring your listing. However, they will trigger that only once a month for each of your ASINs if the return rate pops above a certain amount, which in our world is about 5%. But if that happens each month for several months in a row, we've seen it with about 4 months, then it will trigger kind of a full-on suspension for which there is no automatic restore. So ultimately in our world, the triggering cause of most of this issue with return rate is compatibility and compatibility confusion. And we've got products that are really exciting products, do cool stuff, but they only work kind of with like certain computers or other things like that. And customers, despite our best attempts to really list out exactly what it does and doesn't work with, there's a certain amount of return rate, and it keeps kind of tripping on this process. So that's another one, another type of suspension that's really common.
What do you think about to avoid losing listings on that area in terms of better educating the consumer before the purchase as a way of avoiding those type of suspensions?
Yeah, no, you got to do it, and kind of from my perspective, we were already hugely motivated on that. I mean, returns are expensive. I mean, we pay the shipping on the returns. Returns are, there's a high correlation between a return product and a negative product review, which, is this huge damage to the product over time. So, I just think we have to get more and more creative within the constraints of an Amazon listing, to be able to educate the consumer and to actually steer away people who are going to have a bad experience from buying the product. The challenge is that some consumers just look at the product title and images and make a buy decision. And you may have had that key compatibility detail, down in your description text because it's a corner case. You don't want to just, kind of have this corner case sitting up in your product title. But, I think listings end up in this world really needing to be kind of well balanced between talking about what your product does and why you might want to buy it, and actually being very, very explicit about talking about what your product doesn't do and why you might not want to buy it, so that you can avoid negative experiences that turn into negative reviews and then potentially suspensions.
Yeah, I agree 100%. In fact, one of the things that we do when someone does lose a listing or they do get suspended is to argue that that's one of the changes that are now being made, so that consumers are a little better educated. Even though it might cost you a few sales, it'll also cost you less time down on listings or the dreaded suspension. All right, what are your thoughts? And this is a question from Kennedy, one of our listeners. Buying products from Walmart, and Toys R Us, and Target, and then losing those listings, and how to avoid that? How to avoid losing listings? This is like a retail arbitrage.
Yeah, this one's for you, CJ.
Well, I think that in terms of doing retail arbitrage, I think it has always been and will continue to be a great training for sellers. Okay, you can buy and sell and get right into business. You certainly want to only do it with products that you can show are genuine and have really good detailed receipts. Amazon is very now erratic about accepting those receipts. We're very successful at getting RA sellers back on using receipts and drafting concise and persuasive plans of action. But it's certainly, I don't think it's a long-term business model. It's sort of on the downward slope, but it's great training to get into private label selling and developing your own brand and learning what it is that you have a great eye for and how you can then do business more long-term. So is it still successful? Yes. Are people still making a ton of money doing it? Absolutely. But again, riding the horse in the direction that it's going, developing a private label is probably, if it's not in your future, you may want to make it into your future and sort of shift gears a bit. Let's see, the questions more are, let's see, how are we doing on time? We've got about 6 minutes left. If you have any further questions, you want to get them on, please submit them quickly because they're going to pop up and then we can try and answer them. Let's see, where were we?
So CJ, how does somebody contact you? What's the best way to kind of reach you?
The best way to reach me is either by calling the office. I know it's a little bit of old school. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is actually giving sellers someone to talk to, which you don't get with Amazon. So it's we have a toll-free number here in the States. It's 877, the number 9, and then sellers, SELLERS. or the New York number is 212-256-1109. You can also email us from our website, AmazonSellersLawyer.com. Sellers is plural, lawyer is singular. In the top left is my email address, cj@AmazonSellersLawyer.com. It's a mouthful. It's a lot to type. We get back to practically everyone that writes to us within a day or so. Sometimes we do fall behind, but you will get either a call or an email back from me. And that's probably the best way of reaching us. Bernie, what's the best way of reaching out to you and getting the help that your company provides?
Yeah, so our tools, we basically built a bunch of tools to make our private label selling business successful, and we've made those tools available to others, and that includes some of the things we talked about here in terms of getting notified about negative reviews before there might be a suspension event or anything, and being able to also, when you get a suspension event, be able to do deep dive research into the reviews, into the orders, and be able to have a whole picture, even though Amazon doesn't really hand you the whole picture. So the site is efficientera.com. There's a lot of different tools there because it's everything we did to make our selling business successful. So we give you a long 60-day free trial so that you can really figure out whether these tools will help you or not and are worth the value or not. And we think the pricing is really favorable too once you're past the 60-day trial, but I'll let you be the judge of that.
Well, Bernie, I want to thank you very much. I think that I want to thank you on behalf of the listeners for giving really, really great information. Sellers need to be empowered this time of year, especially. This is when listings suspensions start to skyrocket. It seems to be a shelf clearing effort by Amazon, September, October, November, leading into the Christmas season. So I would tell sellers, be careful, stay on top of your listings, stay on top of the forums and the blogs, look at the tools at Efficient Era. But now is the time you need to maintain so that you are in the game and your products are there for selling leading up to this year's Christmas season.
Great.
Thank you very, very much for joining us. Thank you, Bernie, for being on. And any questions, feel free to email us and go to our websites for more information. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.